The bell above the door jingled lightly as I stepped into the small-town grocery store, hoping to quickly grab some supplies before heading home. It was a quaint place, familiar and cozy, yet today felt different. Almost immediately, I sensed his presence, the lingering aura that always made my skin crawl. There he was, Rick, managing the checkout counter with his usual unsettling smile. It had been years since my mum broke things off with him, but he never seemed to move on. Instead, he lingered, haunting our lives like a persistent shadow. As I moved down the aisles, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Rick's eyes followed me, his gaze unnervingly intense. It wasn't just in my head, others had noticed too. I caught sympathetic glances from the store's regulars, acknowledging the discomfort we all felt. Every turn I made, he was there, casually stocking shelves or adjusting displays, always within sight, always too close for comfort. His presence was suffocating, a reminder of a past we all wanted to forget. With each passing minute, my nerves grew more frayed. Every time I glanced up, there he was, that smile never faltering, as if he knew exactly the unease he caused. The air thickened with tension, and I hurried through my shopping, each moment feeling like an eternity under Rick's watchful eyes. Finally, with my basket full and my nerves on edge, I made my way to the checkout. Rick greeted me with a falsely cheerful tone, his eyes locking onto mine as if trying to read my thoughts. I paid quickly, avoiding any unnecessary conversation, and practically fled the store, relief washing over me as I stepped back into the fresh air. Outside, I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering discomfort. Rick may have been a part of our past, but his presence still had the power to unsettle me. I walked briskly towards my car, eager to leave behind the suffocating atmosphere of that grocery store and the memories it stirred. As I drove away, I couldn't help but wonder how long Rick would continue to haunt our lives, a reminder of a time we all wished to forget. I arrived home from the grocery store still unsettled by the encounter with Rick. The familiar comfort of home offered some solace, but I knew I couldn't keep silent about what had happened. Gathering my courage, I decided it was time to confront my parents. That evening, we gathered in the living room, a rare moment when both Mum and Dad were home early from work. They exchanged curious glances as I hesitated, trying to find the right words to express my unease. Finally, I took a deep breath and began recounting the details of my trip to the store. I described how Rick's presence seemed to loom over me, his eyes following my every move with unsettling intensity. The way he hovered nearby, always within sight, made my skin crawl. Mum's expression darkened as I spoke, her concern evident. Dad listened quietly, his brow furrowed in deep thought. They knew about Rick, his history with Mum and his persistent attempts to stay in our lives despite her clear rejection. "I don't like it," I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. "It's like he's watching us, waiting for something." Mum exchanged a worried glance with Dad, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "He shouldn't be making you feel this way," she said softly, her voice tinged with frustration. Dad sighed heavily, his gaze distant as he processed my words. "We've dealt with him before," he muttered, more to himself than to us, "but he just doesn't seem to get the message." We fell into a tense silence, the weight of Rick's presence hanging heavy in the air. It wasn't just about my discomfort anymore. It was about our family's safety and peace of mind. "What do we do?" Mum finally asked, her voice betraying a hint of fear. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Dad looked at me, his expression firm. "We'll figure something out," he said, his tone resolute. "We can't let him continue like this." As we discussed our options late into the night, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. It was clear that Rick's presence had unsettled all of us, but we were determined not to let him intrude any further into our lives. That night, as I lay in bed, thoughts of Rick and his unsettling behavior continued to haunt me. I knew this was far from over, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse before they got better. The next day, still reeling from the unsettling encounter at the grocery store, I knew I needed help beyond just my parents. With a sense of determination, I decided to seek out my grandfather, a man whose resolve and authority were well known in our family. I drove over to Grandpa's home, a stately old house that always seemed to exude a sense of wisdom and strength. He welcomed me with a warm embrace, though his sharp eyes immediately noticed my troubled expression. "Something on your mind, kiddo?" he asked gently, guiding me to the comfortable armchairs in his study. Taking a deep breath, I recounted the events at the grocery store, detailing Rick's unsettling behavior and the discomfort it had caused me and my family. Grandpa listened intently, his brow furrowing deeper with each passing detail. "I know Rick," Grandpa said finally, his voice tinged with a mix of frustration and resolve. "He's always been trouble, even back when he was young." I nodded, grateful that Grandpa understood the gravity of the situation. His past experiences with Rick had shaped his perception, and I knew his determination to help us would be unwavering. Without hesitation, Grandpa picked up the phone and made a call. His voice was firm and authoritative as he spoke to someone on the other end, Rick's employer. I couldn't hear the details of their conversation, but I could sense the seriousness in Grandpa's tone. After what felt like an eternity, Grandpa hung up the phone with a satisfied nod. "I've spoken to them," he said, his gaze unwavering. "They'll be looking into Rick's behavior and taking appropriate action." Relief flooded through me. Grandpa's intervention was exactly what we needed, someone with authority and influence to step in and address Rick's unsettling presence in our lives. "Thank you, Grandpa," I said sincerely, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Grandpa smiled, a rare expression of warmth and reassurance. "Family looks out for each other," he said simply, his eyes reflecting the years of wisdom and strength. "We'll make sure Rick understands he's not welcome to cause trouble anymore." As I left Grandpa's home that day, I felt a renewed sense of hope. With his support and determination, I knew we were one step closer to reclaiming our peace of mind from Rick's unsettling presence. The days following Grandpa's intervention were filled with a tense anticipation. We waited anxiously to see if Rick's unsettling presence at the grocery store would finally come to an end. It wasn't long before we received the news we'd been hoping for. I decided to visit the store again, partly out of curiosity and partly to confront the remnants of my discomfort. As I walked through the familiar aisles, a noticeable change hung in the air, a sense of relief mixed with lingering unease. I spotted the store manager, usually a friendly face, standing with a serious expression near the checkout counter. As I approached, I overheard snippets of conversation, a discussion about Rick's dismissal. "He crossed a line," the manager was saying firmly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "We can't tolerate that kind of behavior here." I listened quietly, my heart racing with a strange mix of relief and lingering fear. Rick had finally been confronted with the consequences of his actions, but what would his reaction be? Sure enough, I caught a glimpse of Rick in the corner of the store, his expression a mixture of surprise and indignation. He noticed me too, our eyes meeting briefly before he turned away, unable to face the weight of his dismissal. As I completed my shopping, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Rick's unsettling presence no longer loomed over me with the same intensity. The store felt lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. Adjusting to life without Rick's unsettling presence took time. I found myself visiting the store less often, opting instead for quieter, less crowded places. Each time I did go, I couldn't help but glance nervously at the checkout counter, half expecting to see him there again. But gradually the fear subsided, replaced by a cautious optimism. Our family had taken a stand against Rick's unsettling behavior, and it had paid off. The store became a place of familiarity once more, a place where we could shop without the shadow of Rick's presence haunting us. As I drove home that day, I reflected on how far we had come. Rick's dismissal was not just a victory for our family, but for everyone who had felt uncomfortable in his presence. It was a reminder that sometimes standing up for what's right can lead to the peace and security we deserve. With Rick's unsettling presence finally removed from our lives, a sense of calm settled over our small town. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted, and we could finally breathe freely again. In the days and weeks that followed, I noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The grocery store no longer held the same sense of unease. I could shop without constantly looking over my shoulder, without the lingering fear of Rick's unwanted attention. Life settled into a quiet routine, a routine that felt strangely unfamiliar yet comforting. Each day seemed a little brighter, a little more peaceful, without the shadow of Rick's unsettling presence looming over us. I found myself enjoying simple pleasures again, Long walks in the park, lazy afternoons reading a book by the window, and evenings spent chatting with friends without the underlying tension. Even Mum and Dad seemed more at ease, their shoulders no longer tense with worry. We shared quiet moments together, grateful for the newfound peace that had eluded us for so long. As the weeks turned into months, I began to trust that Rick's dismissal had truly brought an end to his unsettling influence. The town seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief, as if we had collectively overcome a shared challenge. Of course, there were still moments of hesitation, a glance that made my heart skip a beat, or a sudden reminder of Rick's presence in our memories. But each day brought a renewed sense of security, a reminder that we were stronger together. I couldn't help but feel grateful for Grandpa's intervention, for my parents' unwavering support, and for the resilience of our community. We had faced a difficult situation head-on and emerged stronger for it. As I looked out over our quiet town, I realized that sometimes peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of security and the reassurance that we can overcome challenges together. Just when I thought we had finally moved on from Rick's unsettling presence, he found a new way to intrude into our lives through social media. It started with a friend request on Facebook, one that I hesitated to accept, knowing all too well who it was from. Rick's profile picture smirked back at me, a chilling reminder of the past we had tried so hard to leave behind. I ignored the request at first, hoping it would be the end of it, but the messages soon followed, cryptic, unsettling messages that sent a shiver down my spine. Rick's words were laced with familiarity, as if he hadn't learned his lesson from his dismissal. "Hey there," one message read, accompanied by an unsettling smiley face. "Long time no see. Missed you around town." My heart raced as I read the message, my mind flooded with memories of Rick's unsettling behavior. It was as if he hadn't accepted his dismissal, as if he still believed he had a place in our lives. With trembling fingers, I blocked Rick's profile, hoping to cut off any further attempts at contact. But the messages continued. New profiles, new messages, each more unsettling than the last. "Heard you've been talking about me," another message read, followed by a string of emojis that sent a chill down my spine. I reported each new profile to the social media platform, desperate to reclaim the sense of security we had fought so hard to regain. But Rick was persistent, his attempts at contact becoming more frequent and more unnerving. I confided in Mum and Dad, their expressions mirroring my own fear and discomfort. We discussed our options, legal action, restraining orders, but each seemed daunting in the face of Rick's relentless pursuit. As the days passed, I found myself once again looking over my shoulder, afraid of running into Rick in town or seeing another unsettling message pop up on my phone. The peace we had enjoyed felt shattered, replaced by a sense of unease that seemed to follow me everywhere. But through it all, I refused to let Rick's return undo the progress we had made. With the support of my family and the determination to reclaim our peace of mind, I knew we would find a way to confront Rick once and for all. Rick's relentless pursuit through social media continued to escalate, leaving me feeling increasingly anxious and frustrated. Despite blocking his profiles and reporting his messages, he persisted in finding new ways to contact me. Each day brought a new notification, a new friend request, a new message from an unfamiliar profile. Rick's persistence was unnerving, his messages veering from unsettling attempts at friendliness to veiled threats that sent a chill down my spine. "I know you're trying to ignore me," one message read, accompanied by an emoji that seemed to mock my discomfort. "But we both know I'm not going anywhere." I felt trapped, as if Rick's unsettling presence had followed me into every aspect of my life. The peace we had fought so hard to regain was slipping through my fingers, replaced by a constant fear of what Rick might do next. I confided in Mom and Dad again, their frustration matching my own. We discussed seeking legal advice, knowing that Rick's behavior had crossed into harassment. But the thought of legal action seemed daunting, a reminder of just how deeply Rick's unsettling presence had affected our lives. With their support, I reached out to a lawyer, a decision that felt both empowering and terrifying. I shared screenshots of Rick's messages, detailing his relentless pursuit despite being blocked on multiple occasions. The lawyer listened attentively, offering reassurance and guidance on our options. Restraining orders, cease and desist letters, each step felt like reclaiming a sense of control over the situation, a way to push back against Rick's unwelcome intrusion. As we discussed our legal strategy, I felt a glimmer of hope amidst the anxiety. Rick's unsettling behavior had brought us to this point, but we were determined not to let him continue to disrupt our lives. Days turned into weeks as we navigated the legal process, each new message from Rick a reminder of the stakes. But with each step forward, I found strength in knowing that we were taking action to protect ourselves and reclaim our peace of mind. I found myself sitting in the lawyer's office, surrounded by shelves filled with legal tomes and the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. This was our next step, the decision to explore legal options against Rick's relentless harassment. The lawyer, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, listened attentively as I recounted the unsettling saga of Rick's persistent attempts to contact me, despite being blocked repeatedly on social media. "I'm sorry you're going through this," she said sympathetically, her voice carrying a note of determination. "But you've taken the right step by seeking legal advice." She proceeded to explain the legal options available to us. Restraining orders, she explained, could prohibit Rick from contacting me directly or indirectly, including through social media or third parties. It was a legal tool meant to provide immediate protection from harassment and unwanted contact. As she outlined the process of obtaining a restraining order, filing paperwork, documenting instances of harassment, and potentially attending a court hearing, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The thought of confronting Rick legally was daunting, but it also offered a glimmer of hope for finally putting an end to his unsettling presence in our lives. "We'll need to gather evidence," the lawyer continued, her tone businesslike yet reassuring. "Screenshots of messages, records of any attempts at contact, anything that can substantiate your claim of harassment." I nodded, taking mental notes as she explained the importance of documenting each instance of Rick's unwanted contact. It was a meticulous process, but one that felt empowering in its ability to provide a clear path forward. As the consultation drew to a close, I thanked the lawyer for her guidance, feeling a renewed sense of determination. Legal action against Rick was no longer just a consideration. It was a necessary step towards reclaiming our peace of mind and ensuring our safety. Leaving the lawyer's office, I carried with me a folder filled with paperwork and a newfound sense of resolve. Rick's unsettling presence had pushed us to this point, but we were ready to face the legal challenges ahead, united in our determination to put an end to his harassment once and for all. With legal steps underway to address Rick's harassment, our family gathered for a discussion, seeking solidarity and reassurance in each other's presence. It was a moment of unity, a reaffirmation of our determination to protect ourselves from Rick's unsettling presence. Around the kitchen table, Mum, Dad, Grandpa and I sat together, our faces reflecting a mix of determination and concern. We had come a long way from the initial discomfort Rick had caused, and now we faced a new challenge together. "I've spoken to some of our relatives," Grandpa began, his voice steady and resolute. "They're all on board with supporting us however they can." Mum nodded, her expression mirroring the relief I felt. "It's good to know we're not alone in this," she said softly, her hand reaching out to squeeze mine reassuringly. Dad chimed in, his voice tinged with determination. "We need to stay vigilant," he said firmly. "Rick won't stop easily, but together we can make sure he doesn't disrupt our lives any longer." We discussed additional measures to protect ourselves, keeping our social media profiles private, being cautious about sharing personal information online, and staying in regular contact with each other to monitor any new developments. "I'll keep an eye out around town," Grandpa added, his tone carrying the weight of his years of experience. "If Rick tries anything, he won't get away with it." The sense of solidarity among us was palpable, a shared determination to stand firm against Rick's unsettling behavior and to reclaim our peace of mind. Despite the challenges ahead, I felt a renewed sense of strength knowing that our family was united in facing this threat together. As we concluded our discussion, we made plans to continue gathering evidence for the legal case, to stay vigilant in monitoring Rick's actions, and to support each other through the uncertainties that lay ahead. Leaving the kitchen table that evening, I carried with me a sense of gratitude for my family's unwavering support and a newfound resolve to see this through to the end. Rick's unsettling presence had brought us together in ways we hadn't expected, and together we were prepared to protect ourselves and reclaim our sense of security.